Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live, and it is my honor tonight to have with us as our special guest, Christine Evangelista, who we all know as Sherry from The Walking Dead and, of course, Fear the Walking Dead. Christine, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Good. And in your honor, I am wearing my Christine T-shirt.
There's a
Now,
Christine t-shirt? What?
yes. Now, this is from the movie Christine. I don't want you to think that I'm
Oh,
comparing. I don't want you to
the
think that I'm
car movie?
Yeah, I don't want you to think that I'm, comparing you to a demonically possessed
The
car.
car? Yeah.
But I'm like, I thought this would be absolutely appropriate. So,
That's
again,
pretty cool.
thank you so much for being here with us. How's it going?
Pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yes, and we have a lot of questions for you. So I just want to
Awesome.
dive right into it.
Let's do it.
You are a native, true-born New Yorker like me. So go ahead and tell us when and where did your passion for acting start, and how did you get the ball rolling on that?
You know, so I'm from New York. I grew up on Staten Island. I was born in the Bronx. My mom's from the Bronx. My dad's from Queens. It's a very, very New York Italian family. And, my father works for the fire department. He was a mechanic for the fire department. My grandfather was a fireman. My mom's a nurse. My grandmother's a nurse. Like, I just come from a very working class New York family.
Yeah, I know all about that.
Yeah, and I love it. And I think, I just as a kid, I loved performing. I was always in dancing school, always in musical theater. And by the time I was a teenager, I was going to school in Manhattan and doing little off-Broadway plays. But when I was really young, my mother worked the night shift in a
Mm-hmm.
hospital. And my father would be home like 4 or 5 o'clock when I was home from school, and he wouldn't know what to do with us. So we would go either eat a TV dinner or pick up McDonald's, but we would always go to Blockbuster. And a couple nights a week, we'd go to Blockbuster and pick out a movie and watch it together. And my father's hearing impaired. And so we always had like the closed caption, like the old school, like early
Mm-hmm.
90s closed caption on. So I would fall in love with movies and just read the caption on the TV. So I fall in love with script. And it was just this thing that I would do with my father. And, it's funny that you wore the Christine t-shirt, because my dad would always rent kind of inappropriate movies, like thrillers and horror movies. Like I was watching Chucky and Christine when I was, in elementary school. Like you don't let a little girl watch Chucky, but
No.
but we would watch that. And I think that's where it just kind of nurtured my love of films. And, by the time I was maybe 18 years old, I was doing plays in the city and got a manager through there. But, I obviously don't come from an acting background by any means, but my parents are pretty awesome with
That's a great
letting me do my thing,
that's a great story. And having your family spread out all over New York City. I'm from
Yeah, where are you
Queens.
from?
I'm
You're from
Queens.
Queens? Oh, what part
Yep.
of Queens?
About 3 train stops away from City Field.
Okay, my
Yeah.
family's from Victoria.
Oh, that's very close. That's
Yeah.
literally like less than a mile away as well. So now you acted in several off-Broadway shows, which must have been exciting in themselves. Is theater what you were primarily interested in, or was your ultimate goal to get into motion pictures, television, movies?
Well, I just recently did a play. It was, at the end of 2019, going into 2020, actually right before I started working on theater. And before that, I hadn't done a play in like a decade. So I started working in TV and film when I was about 18. But going back to doing a play again was extraordinary, and totally fell in love with it. And it made me fall in love with the craft all over again. And it's definitely something I want to do again as soon as we can. And I'm excited that theater's coming back this fall.
Yay, Broadway's
Look over there.
reopening.
But listen, I love working in television so much. I love the consistency of it, and just really working on something for a long period of time and having tremendous character arcs. And making movies is like a unicorn, man. Like making a movie is a unicorn. It is
Hmm.
so hard to do. And it is so appreciated. So I just love acting.
Listen, I got to tell you this. Listening to you speak, And then listening to your character, Sherry, you so have a New York accent.
Yeah. I have a very heavy New York accent. It used to be a lot worse.
Do you
It's
mask
the good.
that when you're playing Sherry? I mean, you have to. You're masking it
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah, yeah. Sherry's not from Staten Island.
No, no, no.
No, but most of my characters, I mean, I don't, it's very rare that I get to use my New York accent.
People tell me I have a New York accent. I'm like, I don't hear it. I'm sorry, I
You
don't.
definitely do. And I think it's your fault that I actually have a New York accent right now because you are bringing it out of me. So,
Hey, two New Yorkers, I'm fine with that. Especially true born New Yorkers like we are. Now, when you got the when you made your break from off Broadway onto a TV show called Conviction in 2006,
God, yeah.
were you ecstatic? Were you thrilled, nervous? What were you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think that was like my first thing I did. I think I did a film before that, I think. But
Well, you know, IMDb, you got to take it with a big grain of salt.
right, but when to your point, yeah, I think I was nervous. I mean, understanding the mechanics of television or filmmaking, it's a different medium, and there's different technicalities than when you have an entire, stage. So honing that all in, but I was definitely nervous. But I think there's a level of nerves with every project that
Yeah.
I start up again. That doesn't go away,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
no, no. Now you did from that point on, you were in several movies, several TV shows, but in 2015, you land on The Walking Dead, to
Yeah.
what is a very big character from the comic book series, the source material. How intense was the audition process for AMC to cast Sherry?
It wasn't very intense.
Really?
I have to say, they give you phantom sides, so I did not know I was auditioning for Sherry. I didn't know anything. The scene wasn't an accurate scene. I think it was it was two scenes if I remember, and they were relatively short, but they were written really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I taped it on my computer on my MacBook at the time. It was an audition I did in my living room in 2015, and I really wanted it, but I was sure I was not going to get it. And I remember getting a phone call a few days later from my manager saying that they were interested in me. And the next thing I knew, I was on a plane. I flew to Georgia and met Austin Emilio, and the two of us had no idea still what characters we were playing. And we sat down with the team over there, and they were like, "Yeah, you're Dwight and Sherry." And I immediately went home and started looking up Sherry and realized, who she was. And I was so excited to be playing a comic book character on the show. I was so excited to be on a show like this. Like going back to what I was telling you with my father, like he loves content like this. He was a huge Walking Dead fan. So I was so excited to be doing something that I knew that he would really want to watch.
Now
But
you
yeah,
must have known that 2015, we're still talking The Walking Dead is still at its peak viewership.
huge, huge, huge.
You
Yeah,
must have known that you are walking into the biggest show on television.
yeah,
How did
yeah.
that feel? I
It
mean,
was, it was surreal. I just kept thinking to myself, I just want to do a good job. I just really want to do a good job because it's such a beloved show, and it was such a tremendous opportunity.
hmm
And I was so, again, very nervous, but everyone was so great. And Norman was fantastic. Andrew Lincoln was like so great. Mostly that episode, it was me, Dwight, and Norman.
yeah.
And yeah, it was so thrilling.
Did it help having Austin be a newcomer? You guys were introduced at the same time. Did it
Yeah.
help having Austin be also in the same position you were?
And it was funny because looking back at the photos now, like it was so long ago, we look so young. But even us sitting there together, just learning who these characters were all in real time and us meeting together and just embarking on this adventure together to think where we are now, it's kind of wild, right?
It is.
Yeah.
What were your impressions when you walked onto that set and knowing that the money that is being pumped into The Walking Dead did it impress you, the scope of The Walking Dead set?
yeah, not only the scope of the Walking Dead set, which was huge, right? But it was also the passion of all the people that worked on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really mean that. I tell the story a lot that Andrew Lincoln wasn't even working in that episode, if you remember. And
Mm-hmm.
he came to set that day to introduce himself to me in Austin and to welcome us aboard. And for somebody to do that, it takes, I mean, it's
Everyone says that about.
it's incredible. It was so generous. It was so warm and inviting, and it just made me feel like, wow, he's really serious about this. He's really passionate and invested. Like everybody is equally as invested. I would joke all the time that the crew members, right? Like I've never seen two guys dig a ditch so fast, right? And I'm an
Yeah,
Italian. That's a bad joke, but like I
I
like
get it.
but like the people, they just work so hard because they love the show so much, and seeing that was really, really cool. I hadn't really seen that before on TV shows, you know.
Yeah, everyone I've spoken to that's come through The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead. I mean, especially The Walking Dead, they say the exact same thing about Andrew. He was the welcome wagon on any.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter if you're a front leading star that was going to be on the show for a while or there for one episode. He was the
yeah.
welcome wagon. Now, Dwight and Sherry introduced us to the Saviors. When you
Mhm.
found out that, you got the role and went to Georgia and you saw the set, did they tell you uh, how long your character was going to go for? What was the plans they had for Sherry? Or were you doing it on an episode by episode basis?
They don't even tell us that now. What are you talking about? No, I did. No, I did not know. I didn't know much at the time. I knew what was going to happen. You know, the green boots. I knew the comic book. But everything was so. I mean, that still took quite a bit of time for all of that to happen. You know, Negan wasn't introduced until a little bit later. So,
Did when you got the role, did you do any kind of binge watching to sort of catch up with the show in and out just to see where they were?
of course, yeah, did all of that. I mean, again, more than anything, reading the comic books.
Yeah, exactly. Because going to the comic books, this leads me to my next question. Several months ago, Rosemary Rodriguez, the great director from The Walking Dead, made some statements when it came to the show presenting Negan's wives, to which you were one of. In the comic books, they were represented in very scantily clad clothing. And that, Rosemary didn't like that. And I'm glad that they went the way they did with the show. Not completely conservative, but not the way it's depicted in the comic books either. Do you remember on set, was there a lot of debate on that?
I
Old,
do remember.
old,
I remember. God, you're just reminding me now. But I do remember the notion of the women wearing the same looking outfit. Like we were all wearing these black dresses.
yes.
And I remember it just being so strange to be wearing a dress on The Walking Dead, but also jewelry. There was a necklace that Sherry was wearing, and I just remember thinking, like, how strange it must feel for these characters to be wearing anything that's
Yeah.
just not utilitarian, you know?
How did you prepare to play such a woman who's in such a complicated situation? You are married to Dwight, and as punishment for trying to escape, Negan takes you as one of his many wives and turns your husband into one of his workers, his helpers, lieutenants, whatever you want to call Dwight, that he rubs it in his nose every single day as punishment. That's a very weird situation. As an actress, what did you do to get into that zone and portraying the emotions that Sherry must have been feeling, having to be with Negan, who she despised, and having her husband watch the whole thing?
I mean, it's really painful. I can't imagine. I mean, just knowing what we know now, you know, because the story of Sherry has been able to be a bit more has evolved a bit more, and we could see just the pain and the trauma that she suffered because of that. But I
Mm-hmm.
think in that moment, she's going through the motions, right? You're just in survival mode. You just have to do what you have to do to get to the next day. And I think, of course, that builds and builds and builds inside somebody where they can't take it anymore. They need to break out. They need to leave. And I think, or they need to do something drastic.
Yeah,
And that happened to her. And then once she was able to do that, then it's just the grieving, the stages of grief that you experience, and then on top of it all, losing your partner, not
exactly.
knowing what's happening to him, not knowing if he's alive. And but I think in that moment when she was in the sanctuary, she's just doing what she has to do in order to survive
Yeah.
and enduring all of the abuse because of it.
Do you think what your character did, Sherry, in letting Daryl escape, you gave him the means to escape? Do you think that was the trigger point, the pivot point for Dwight's character to turn against Negan and start helping the Alexandrian survivors? You think it was inspired by what Sherry did? It took a lot of guts. You ran away. You successfully ran away. You could have just left and left Daryl there, but no, you helped Daryl escape. You think that was the pivot point for Dwight to start changing his views?
I think it was like I think there was a ripple effect for sure, right? But it's just this marker where Dwight and Sherry are saying a lot that they wish they could go back to who they used to be, before the pandemic, right? It's who they are at their core, and they are good people, and they lose their way at times because, again, we're all just trying to survive. But the goodness inside of them isn't that the light is still there, and I
Yeah.
think when you spark that light and run with it, that is the yeah, that was a marker for both of them to change the patterns of their behavior and to hopefully eventually get back to who they were, or back to the people that would make each other proud and themselves proud, really.
So when you found out that your last episode was coming up, I was surprised that you were only in 4 episodes of The Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when your final episode came, how did you leave it with the team, the production team? Did they say, "All right, Sherry, thank you. You're gonna, your character is gonna run away, fate unknown," and then say goodbye, or did they say, "You know what? We have plans for Sherry down the road. Just monitor your phone." How did they tell you?
I think the latter was, I mean, it was safe to assume the latter, but there was no conversation. I think, look, it's very hard. You're dealing with a television series that has just so many characters in it and so many worlds, and you don't really know the way things are going to evolve, and sometimes even the writers and the creators don't really know the way things are going to go, and sometimes it's hard to wrangle actors and their scheduling, and I mean, there's so many obstacles in the way, and I'm sure but I think I always knew that I would be coming back. I had no idea that it would be on another show within The Walking Dead. I mean, when Austin went over to The Walking Dead, I was like, oh, it would be over there. But there was always talk, of AMC over to my team, and expressing interest, of course, and seeing my level of interest. There was always an open communication, but I mean, to what extent I didn't know. And this is certainly a very pleasant surprise.
So when did you find out that your AMC reached out and they want you to come back to the universe, the Walking Dead universe, but on Fear the Walking Dead? How did you find out?
I think it was like mid to early 2019 where they were talking to me about it and coming back in within the next season, and it was in the, I think, the winter of 2019 when I sat down with Andrew and Ian, and they told me about the next season, and they explained the anthology format and their plans for Sherry, and it was all really exciting and new and fresh, and I was just thrilled to do it. But yeah, it was like mid 2019. It's not
Now,
that long. But.
You coming back was one of the best kept secrets. They did a great job. What did you personally have to do to avoid it being leaked out? I mean, obviously, you were in Texas shooting. What kind of precautions and measures were put in place to make sure that you were not seen around the set?
Yeah, there were a few precautions. I think there was a lot of, they would escort me under big umbrellas to go to set every day in case anybody, because sometimes there are people watching us film, and
Yeah.
we try to block all that as much as possible. It was very limited engagement on social media, of course. Um, yeah, so we tried our best.
And it was very good. It was, I think, leaked. It did eventually get leaked, so the show did have to acknowledge it. But it was very close to the beginning of.
Nobody knew to what extent, right?
No,
Like nobody knew if it was going to be a dream sequence or
no,
something, you
no,
know.
no. Nobody knew any details. I remember when I read the media article, I read it to my viewers. And one thing I remember saying is, listen, guys, the Sherry that we're going to get in Fear is not going to be the same Sherry that we last saw on The Walking Dead. That leads me to my next question. How do you feel about how they changed your character up for Fear the Walking Dead into more of a fighter, survivor, Sherry, as opposed to the one that we saw in The Walking Dead?
I was so game for it. If you think about this young woman on her own after everything she experienced and everything that she carried with her, and just the reality of being on your own in this world, right? It just creates this hardened version. And I kept saying it was like this Sherry 2.0. And it's kind of amazing that what I had in mind before I even received the script, which we filmed in January of 2020. So when I was thinking about the character and her development all through the winter of 2019, I was like, I had in my mind what I wanted her to be like, and just the different, tougher, driven, and independent, and I mean all those words. And when I read the script, I was like, wow, I was just very cool that we all saw eye to eye. It was great. But I'm really happy about it, and I hope everyone's happy with.
Oh yeah, I love that reunion scene. I gotta say, it made me emotional watching it in the building, and you and Dwight on the walkie-talkies, him coming down the stairs, seeing you in the alley. How'd you guys work? Did you and Austin really rehearse on how you're going to present this to the audience?
Coleman directed it, right,
Yes,
which was
yes.
super cool. So I remember going to work. I mean, we didn't. Coleman was just adamant about, the only thing he really said, he was like, this is going to be like this slow, that the entire episode, there was so much action, there were so many things happening, and then by the end of it, you have this slow pull where they see each other at the end of this alleyway, and they're slowly, he's running, he's running, and then the camera will just spin around them, and it's just them,
Yeah,
right? Like just them in that moment, everything else is gone.
yeah.
And that's the one thing that Coleman had told us, and he's so right. And visually, it looked really great, and it was just really cool to do. But we just, and I'm glad people. It was really sweet to see how much it meant to people and how they responded to it. And
It was
I really appreciated that.
it was a very intense emotional scene. At least for me, I can speak for myself. It was definitely emotional. Before we dive deeper into Fear, just one last thing on The Walking Dead. In regards, I mean, you had, of course, your interaction the most with Austin, Norman, and then, of course, we can't leave Jeffrey out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
How was it working with Jeffrey? He does such a brilliant job at playing Negan. Back then, when we saw him, when he was, I'm sorry, but he was an asshole. The character was an asshole. To where he is now, and he's come such a long way. How did he deal in between takes and flipping into the character of Negan? As far as you viewing it, what was your perception of it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he had a really hard job. His dialogue was really lengthy. He would talk for minutes at a time. But he's so good and he's so charismatic, and he's such a great actor, but he's a really cool guy.
Yeah.
And it was exciting to even watch him. It was exciting to watch him perform, because he was performing.
Yeah.
Negan would speak, he would command attention, and it was, and watching him as an actor do that also, it was magnetic, right? That's one thing that anybody could say about Negan. He's super magnetic.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you felt that way watching Jeffrey too. It was like he was perfect for it. He was perfect for the part.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, I've seen him in so many different. He's just such a natural, charismatic guy, and him bringing that to Negan, I cannot see anybody else now portraying Negan besides Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He's a great actor. Now, when you were on The Walking Dead, of course, Lenny James was there too, I believe. Yeah, he had come back by that point. But you guys didn't share any screen time. When you made it to Fear, was that really the first time you ever interacted with Lenny?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. Again, like I said earlier, the world, there's so many characters on the show, and each character lives essentially in their own world a lot of the time. And, us in the sanctuary was, at least for Sherry, especially in that moment of time, secluded, literally. So, yeah, we're not seeing so much now on Fear, especially after the last few episodes. The worlds are getting a bit more condensed, I think, and everyone's leaving. So it's really cool, like, working with everybody. It's very cool, those days on set where we're all there. It's a lot of fun.
I bet it is. Now, what's really obvious from when we saw Sherry again on Fear, we know that she has it out for Virginia. We don't know exactly why. We never really get a story as to how Virginia wronged Sherry personally. But I think that's not the point. The point was that Sherry was deflecting her hatred of Negan and putting it on Virginia.
Totally. Yeah, it's trauma. It's unhealed wounds. It's unhealed trauma. It's psychological, and I think a lot of the people that were around Virginia, I think Sherry identified with and wanted to help them. And then she thought by doing that, she would essentially help or heal herself. And I empathize with that.
Yeah.
Because it was, of course, directly about Virginia. It was about Negan.
Exactly.
But it's just unresolved pain. It's deep, deep pain. And I think she's just really struggling to get over it, because she needed to shake it, and she thought by doing that and helping other people, maybe she would be able to.
Now, going from Alexandria, Virginia, where the setting was, and traveling all the way to Texas, and yet again coming across another despot in Virginia. But towards the end of season 6, when you had a chance to kill Virginia, which would you say was the moment that Sherry realized that my anger is not really is directed at Virginia, it's more towards Negan? You had Virginia, you had the shot, you didn't take it. Lenny, Morgan, and you, he begged you to he didn't beg you, but he said, let us go, and you let them go. You didn't take the shot. Do you think that's the moment that Sherry realized that my beef is not with Virginia, it's with Negan?
I think that it's a slow understanding. She hears it for the first time in the MRAP from Dwight, where she actually needs to get him, and Dwight's like, who's him? And there's that moment of like, oh wait, I'm sorry, I was thinking about Negan, and it doesn't really hit home. I think it doesn't really hit home until even after Virginia's dead. It's not until she's at the funeral, I think, for John Dory, where she looks at what happens, and she looks at what happened to June and losing your partner, and just how difficult this life is. Why are we making it even harder for ourselves, separating herself from her partner for
Yeah.
love, for friend, and on this quest for redemption and to to fight the good fight alone, and it's painful, and I felt really bad for her, but I think it wasn't until that, because she was still on the quest to like go back, and she's like, I got to do this, I got to get Negan, and it wasn't until you start to the reality of like, wow, you could lose it all.
Yeah.
You did.
I love that moment between you and Austin when he's like, "Let's just start over. Let's just start fresh." That's a really powerful moment. I was fully expecting for Sherry to push back and say no, but I'm glad that you realize that if I do kill Negan, is it really going to heal all the wounds that I have? And I think that's when you really came to an understanding that probably not,
No,
you
and
know?
a lot it's forgiveness too, and what Dwight says in that moment is forgiveness, and it's allowing her to forgive herself, really, for what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Forgive everybody, and I think forgiveness is such a powerful tool, and I think that's why it was so relatable for people. That moment of like, we can start over, we can connect again.
Yeah.
It's relatable for me. I've in various ways been in similar experiences where you just want to be able to forgive and you want to be able to move on.
Do you think it's possible, for humans to find that same connection they once had, before, let's say, the fictional apocalyptic world happens, as your two characters had in Fear the Walking Dead, where at the end of the season, we do get a happy ending for Dwight and Sherry. You guys, and everybody was rooting for you guys to get back together. And I loved how Austin played out Dwight's character to where he gave you the space that you needed, because he finally realized that Sherry needed to come to this realization on her own. Do you like to think that that's possible, that humans, after what they've got, what your characters have gone through, and the separation, that in the end, it's a love story, and true love will prevail?
True love will prevail. I mean, it's a beautiful idea that, and of course I believe in it. Of course, and I think that at the end of the day, all these characters, all of them have is hope. All they have is hope.
Yes.
Yes, of course, Sherry and Dwight are connecting again, and we hope that they could stay in that connection. Life is hard, and it's about to get even harder. And, the fear of abandonment is real in both of them.
Yeah.
That doesn't go away. And I think it was just this moment of breath for just, not only the characters on the show, but of course the people watching that have been really rooting for the two of them and rooting for love, because God, if you don't have love and you don't have hope, what do you have? Right?
Exactly.
In the
Yeah.
world, and it was much needed. It was much deserved.
Absolutely. And in the Walking Dead, where we rarely get any happy endings, at least by the time the end of season 6 came around, the story between Dwight and Sherry was a happy ending. Now we don't know what's going to happen in season 7, because nuclear bombs are raining down on Texas.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
going to be interesting to see. Now, when you found out that they were going to do the changes in Sherry's character uh,
yeah.
that really diverged from the comic books, in the comic books, Sherry stays for a long while, ends up getting killed by Rick Grimes. That leads to a rift between Dwight and Rick. Do you
Mm.
like that they did it the way they did it, and went a different way with the character?
I like that Sherry was alive.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think it's, look, the expansion of the universe. Literally, the expansion has been really exciting, and it has brought so many new, really great characters, and brought its own level of complications. Right, like the world is bigger and it's far more complicated, and it's about to be even more complicated because we're dealing with essentially an apocalypse on top of an apocalypse. Right, not much can grow,
Yeah.
literally. So
Now you're one
I'm
of
I'm stoked with the direction that they're going.
now you're one of the handful of people that have had a chance to work on The Walking Dead, and now you're on Fear the Walking Dead. being on both sets, what would you say are the biggest similarities, and what would you say are the biggest differences?
That's a great question. You know, there's a consistency in the universes in every way. You know, with with my first day on Fear, I was with Austin, but I saw Mikey. You know,
Yeah.
Mikey I worked with on The Walking Dead. There's a lot of writers that come back and forth. And there's just the conversation, you know, Scott Gimple, like there's the same people all around. And what's so great about the show is like it's very incestual. You know,
Hmm.
there's so much back and forth on all of the shows that it offers like there's a lot of comfort in that. You know, even it's that first day back to school, right? But you're still with all of your friends.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, on this new show
But it's the same family.
with friends and there's like a lot of like it was awesome to have Mikey direct that first big episode back with Sherry and Dwight because there's a familiarity between all of us and you know he knows me and he knows the characters and he's so invested in the world of the show and it's like that with everybody so that's really cool. I'd say the difference is you know we're in Texas, we're in Austin, which is pretty awesome by the way, and I love that and
Remember, you're a New Yorker.
always. Oh,
Don't get too attached to Texas.
no, I'm kidding. I'm a Staten Island girl, but and the anthology, the film, the style of filming right now is different, and that's something that's also really great. But I think those are like the differences for sure.
Now, I mean, we had Mikey on several weeks ago, and he says he remembers like yesterday, the day that you and Austin showed up on the set. That's how
Ew.
vividly he
Yeah.
remembers it. Now, we know that the big producers control like the entire universe. You already mentioned Scott Gimple. Does like Gail Ann Hurd and Nicotero drop by in Texas and visit and see what's going on down there, you know, as well as what's going on in Georgia?
Everybody is. Greg is amazing. I haven't seen Greg in a little bit, but everyone is very, very invested in the show, and everyone cares a lot. You know, we're dealing with very different times. COVID has been really hard, and like we're not allowed to have you know, people just can't drop in and out of set like they used to. There's a lot of regulations. I think, you know, over the next year, it might be a little easier for people to come in and drop by, but it's a tight ship, you know, for 300 plus people on set every day. Like, we have to be really careful.
Yeah.
And we take things super seriously, you know, and that's the reason. I mean, we were one of the first shows to get back filming in September. That's wild. Like nobody knew what it was going to be like. And you have this massive television show like Fear that has so many people, you know, working on it. So many stunts, so many physical things, you know, like to have us be one of the first shows that go back is like nobody really knew what to expect. And everyone hunkered down and like did their job. And it was pretty, I mean, it was great. We did it. We did it.
You did it. And in my opinion, this last season of Fear, I told this to Satrazimus as well. In my opinion, it was the best season of the entire Walking Dead universe. And that
Really?
says a lot, yeah. I mean, that's how phenomenal this past season was. There wasn't a slow burn, and I have nothing against slow burn episodes. They're very much needed. But they managed to do every episode. It was just full pedal to the metal.
That's
Uh,
great. Thank you. I mean, that's great. I mean, the storytelling I loved it as an actor. I think actors love it too because there's a story in each episode. You know, there's not just these little moments. There's like an arc in every episode. You just wonder, it's like how people are gonna react to it. You know?
Now, as an
Yeah.
actress during this past season in this anthological format, where you know one episode would focus on a certain group of characters, episode another group of characters. Did you find that you had a lot of downtime in terms of days between, you know, in terms of you showing up on the set and stuff?
Um, yeah, well, we did. You know, also I think our shooting episodes are longer now because there's
Yeah.
regulation involved. So It did take longer. Again, I'm going into it new, so I don't have anything to reference it by. I was walking, this is the way it was when I walked into it. I can't tell if it was different before. But yes, of course, we not being in every episode. But when you're on an ensemble show, you're not in every episode anyway. So
Yeah, that's
I
true.
think it's much better. It's much better to be working heavily in an episode than in briefly in some scene, just to move the storyline. Like as an actor, it's like it's just so great to, it's like a car, man. You just want to like rev that engine up and let it go. You don't want to like stop and start all the time.
Yeah.
So it's really great to just keep that momentum going. And I mean, even just from an acting perspective, but I love the storytelling component of it also.
I mean, the way the anthology format was executed played a huge part into why this past season was so special. It was done well. It was done very well. The writing, the acting, directing, everybody came together to bring
Yeah.
us this amazing season. What is it that you admire the most about your character, Sherry?
I admire her stamina, her stamina, her ability to keep going, her, survival mechanisms. And I think above all, she's deeply rooted in morality and doing the right thing, always wanting to do the right thing. I mean, yes, of course, we all get led astray, but I think even deep down, she couldn't pull the trigger. I think deep down, she knows what is right and what is wrong, and I think that's like commendable.
Yeah.
She's been through a lot. She's tough, but she's, I think, deeply rooted in morality and strength, and I love what she's progressed into.
Yeah. Now we don't get a backstory as to how Sherry got involved with the group of outcasts, the
Yeah,
rejects, Virginia's
yeah.
rejects. As an actress, what kind of backstory did you build in your mind to get into character when we first see you on Fear of the Walking Dead? Did you sort of create any backstory as to Sherry's animosity, how she fell into this group, or did you use the whole Negan thing and project Sherry's anger towards Negan to get into character?
Look, there's a lot of anger that was carried over from Negan, and there's just, you know, Sherry needing to lead the way. And of course, like most of the people that Sherry is with in that group were these guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Young women leading all of these guys, and that requires a lot of strength and determination, um, and just like that power within herself to be like, you're going to listen to me. I know I've been through this. Follow me. That leadership quality also. Yeah, of course, there's a whole backstory, right? There's like, and I mean, even aesthetically, you look at their clothing. It's like this skater park sort of. These guys literally live in like this, ring,
Yeah.
and I've thought about all of that, and how she connected to Raleigh and all those guys, of course, But it's like even before finding those groups of people, it's what happened that time in between leaving the sanctuary and finding them. Like that was all the really exciting stuff that I got to do and journal and write about and think about when they asked me to come back on the show. It's like, oh wow, I have this opportunity to tell this story about when she left that day.
Yeah.
And how different she is now. And that was really, really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. You and Austin have a great on-screen chemistry. Uh, does that come from you guys, being really good friends, off-screen, working together? What do you attribute that great chemistry that you guys have on the screen? Are you guys good friends? Is it just really easy to work with Austin? What do you attribute that to?
Look, he's just a really cool guy. I'm kind of cool, like easy to talk to. And he's a really great actor. I think we respect each other a lot too. There's a lot of respect that I think that carries a lot through. I think he's such a great actor, but he's a good guy, and like it's easy to be around him. I don't know. Sometimes it's just like it just works, and thankfully,
No,
yeah,
but
But we just really respect each other. We like each other too. He's not like a dick, you know. I've worked with plenty of dicks.
Yeah. Having respect for the person that you're going to be on the screen with the most is a huge element.
You imagine going to work every day with someone you don't like?
Oh, God.
Worse.
Jeez. Now,
is that what you're alone?
It actually is. Now, between The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead, you spent quite a bit of time on a TV show called The Arrangement. How difficult was it to get back into the character of Sherry after, not only being away for a while, for several years, but doing this other character called Megan Morrison?
Yeah. I mean, Megan is very different. Both of them, though, I remember, because there was one, the last episode I did on The Walking Dead, I immediately went to work, I think a day or two later, on The Arrangement. And the worlds couldn't be more different. The Walking Dead, we know what that is. And The Arrangement was a show about Hollywood and Scientology and glamour. But it was interesting that you had these two focal characters, these two women that were in this, that were under the dictatorship of these men in this insular environment. Megan Morrison was in this Scientology-esque sort of group, and Sherry was in the sanctuary under Negan. So it was about these two women really fighting and gaining their independence and fighting against the man and the institution or whatever it is. So I thought that was an interesting connection.
Yeah, between two characters.
But I mean, I was dressed in, high-end couture on The Arrangement, and I'm wearing, something that was at the Salvation Army on The Walking Dead. So those were the two differences. But it was, after The Arrangement, coming back to The Walking Dead, I had done some other things in between that time.
Yeah.
I was really ready to get back in and just, play this really tough, down and dirty character like Sherry. I was just so excited, like I was saying earlier, just to get back in this new 2.0 that I
exactly. And now that Sherry has, I think, started, in order to resolve, or not resolve, but to work on PTSD, you have to acknowledge the problem. I think now that Sherry has acknowledged Negan and knows that Negan is the source of everything, I'm really looking forward to where Sherry goes in season 7. I'm really, really looking forward to that. Now, you were part of the awesome horseback scene chasing the MRAP. That's an episode that Michael also directed. How fun was that?
So much fun. So much fun. And, there's so much great horse stuff going on the show. Like, it's just, oh God, watching it, you couldn't understand, like, being there, like, because I didn't see the screen, but, like, God, it was just so beautiful. I remember sitting there in the living room watching it, like, in disbelief of just how dope that was.
How much time did it take to shoot that sequence?
A lot. It took a lot. I think it was more than one day.
I can imagine. And now, what is it like as an actor knowing, I guess your character wasn't killed. What emotions were going through your heart when you found out that, at least for the moment, you were going to leave The Walking Dead? Fate unknown. You didn't know what they were going to do with the character. What were you feeling?
Well, look, this is the job. It's a very unpredictable industry. You never really know. You don't have control over anything, really. You don't really know where things are going a lot of the time. So I didn't think anything of it. I think I just really knew at some point I'd be back. I just didn't know when. And I was really excited about the idea of that. And, just continuing to just work on my craft and, be creative. But I've always been invested in, a fan of the show, and of course going in and wondering to what capacity I could be brought back and what it was going to be like.
Yeah. Let's talk about the season 6 finale in that submarine. I'm sure that must have been really fun to watch and do. Sorry, to act
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
The whole episode. It's like really like 5 to 10 minutes. We get to see what every group is doing after they separate from the submarine. It's
Oh,
basically, uh, I think it's great because it shows us as human beings, you have literally minutes to live. That's what everybody thought. They had minutes to live. What do you
yeah.
do with those minutes? What did you think about? I loved what the interactions between Sherry and Dwight. How did you feel those moments went in the Sherry and Dwight clip of those in that condensed 5 minutes of the episode?
It was, I loved reading the script and how it was done in these sort of, vignettes, these title cards with these stories attached to it. And like,
Yeah.
how do you, with the end, this is it. What have you done?
Mm-hmm.
What if, and you're faced with all of these questions of, you have Sherry walking through that bedroom and looking at the photos of the children and the young girl with the parents. And she's like, I've wasted so much time. Like, I've wasted so much time chasing the wrong God, and
Yeah.
not, and it's a painful thing. And how did I feel? I mean, I was very emotional that day, and it was very emotional. The chaos of the looming, the noise, knowing that it's about to burst. Where are you going to go? And then they finally get there, and they're bringing the people in. They're trying to find some like safe haven and to put this family and so they can do one more right thing, and then and just tell each other one more time how they feel and that they're sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think, like, I mean, I could cry even thinking about that now. Like, what do you do? And I think for so many reasons it was very emotional to film because you think of like, how many people have had such a really difficult time over the past year and needing to say goodbye or like dealing with these like heightened, this heightened reality with not much control. And you think of people that can't go into the hospital to say goodbye to their loved ones and they're standing up. I mean, there was just so much grief and sorrow. So I'm getting very emotional.
No,
But
no, 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 no.
yeah,
It's fine.
I think,
It
it was just,
it
it's a
was
lot when you're faced with, yeah.
I love that clip and between you and Austin and how you do try to save the family and Sherry sort of realizes she spent so much time wasted hating
Yeah.
Negan and it was great. I mean, there's really not many words that can encompass that scene between you two. Yeah, yeah. Now, moving on with Sherry 2.0, as you say it, do you feel that, the producers have given you leeway to continue Sherry's story the way you want to, sort of bring the character story forward?
I trust those guys so much. Andrew and Ian, I mean, they have some really great things in store for season 7. I mean, even outside of Sherry and Dwight, I mean, it's mind blowing.
Okay, we can't
Um,
wait.
but I am excited. I'm excited about just, it's also so disheartening where like these characters finally get together again and like shit goes from bad to worse in the world. And it's
Yeah,
like pressure is on, man. Like things are really rough. And like who's able to not only deal with it all but survive. And I'm very, very excited about season 7, and we've had a blast filming it so far.
we are almost out of time, but I do want to ask you one last question. Going on to Fear the Walking Dead, and meeting Coleman Domingo and Jenna Elfman. I don't know if you've met them before or not, but who has impressed you the most as like what they can do on screen? I know it's probably a tough question.
Look, it is such a tough question because everybody carries their weight. Like everybody. Ruben, like, just breaks my heart. Coleman's so dynamic. Lenny's just baller. Alicia's amazing. I just know, like, growing up, right? Growing up, I watched Jenna Elfman and Mo Collins so much. I
Yeah,
love Dharma and Greg, and I loved Mad TV.
yeah,
And watching Jenna, like in that episode that I got to work with her, and watching her, she's done a lot of work outside of Dharma and Greg, right? I'm not just
Oh yeah.
associating her, but loving that show as much as I did and seeing just her gravitas in this role and how great she is, just how committed she is. Like, I'll send a tent and we'll talk about the show, we'll talk about the script, and hearing her talk about June, I love. I love it. I love her, the way she thinks about the character, and just watching her act is exciting. And Mo Collins is just
She's amazing.
amazing. Like, just one of the coolest, nicest people. Her and her husband just so fantastic. And she's funny. She's so funny, and she brings like a levity to the day.
Momo.
Like,
I love how she
yeah,
calls Morgan Momo.
but she's just great to be around.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
so it's
is
cool watch. It's cool working with people that you grew up watching.
that is so awesome. Christine, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on here. It's been a blast talking
Yeah,
to a New Yorker and talking to you. You are so talented. I'm thrilled that you're back on this in this universe
thank you.
and to continue on the story of Sherry and Dwight. I really enjoy I really mean this. I enjoy the scenes between you and Austin. When you guys
Thank,
are together, there's something special and magical that I can't quite put into words that comes alive. So you do a great
thanks.
job.
Thank you very
Austin
much.
does a great job. Any final thoughts you want to share before we say goodbye?
I just want to thank you so much for the show, for having me on, and thank you for letting me use my accent.
Oh, thank you. I've been so isolated. Everybody says you have a New York accent. It's good to share the screen with somebody who
Yeah.
has a similar New York accent. Guys, thank you so much for
Thank
tuning
you.
in. Stay safe. I'll be back on the air again tomorrow night. And on behalf of Christine and myself, stay walking. Good night.